Hello everybody, welcome back once again. I've got another Clair Obscur Expedition 33 video. This one is going to be on Maelle and her Act 2 weapons. And I should say I'm going to be listing these off in the order that you can obtain them. So the first one that we can actually get a hold of is the Jarum. I actually think that this is probably my favorite weapon for her. Mostly because of the way I play, right? I like to do a lot of challenges where, like, I like to do a lot of Maelle solo stuff, and it just works really, really well for that. But here it says, let's start off with of course, the luck scaling there that I like. Unfortunately, though, it does have defense scaling as well that I don't really get any use out of because I never build defense. But switching to virtuous stance on counterattack there, that is huge. Again, especially if you're doing, kind of like what I do there with the, kind of solo Maelle stuff, right? Because she's going to be counterattacking all the time, I guess assuming that you're actually able to parry things. But that is just huge, right? You don't have to waste a bunch of turns for her to actually get into virtuous. That can be, kind of a pain at times if you don't have gradient charges built up. You would have to probably have something burning and then use Swift Stride, right, to get to virtuous, or dump all of your HP, of course, by using Last Chance. So, again, I really like this one. Just, again, very, very easy to get into virtuous. And I should say, of course, the nice thing about this and that specific ability is you can blow, like a bunch of AP on like a sword ballet, which I believe swaps her to defensive. But then, of course, the enemies that you're fighting will then attack her, and as long as you can counterattack, obviously, again, she'll be switching back into virtuous. I really, really like it. And then there, apply 5 burn on counterattack. That's just another one. Obviously, again, this weapon is based around counterattacks. Obviously, all 3 abilities having some effect or benefit to counterattacking, but applying 5 burns is huge for Act 2. Most of the characters are only going to be running around with about a 75% crit rate or so, assuming that you've gone like full luck and have a couple of Pictos equipped that is going to be increasing your critical rate, or at least that's the way that I set up. And so obviously those 5 burns on counterattack will make sure that you're going to have that extra 25% crit rate due to critical burn. Again, really, really like this one. And then, of course, there's the 50% increased counter damage per shield. To be honest, though, during Act 2, it's just so easy for Maelle to hit the damage cap anyway that that's really not needed. And here I'm actually in Act 3 right now with this playthrough, and I'm still at, obviously, only a level 13 Jarum, and she already just kind of dominates with this thing. So, of course, though, in Act 3, the level 20 benefit would be very, very nice to have, though. So that's obviously a huge damage increase as well. So, I should say, but that's per shield. So, I usually run around with what is it in medias res, which of course then gives the 3 shields at the beginning of battle. Now, of course, if you are getting hit, there's always other ways to get those shields up. Base shield is one. Unfortunately, though, that's, I believe, not available until Act 3. But in medias res is basically available immediately at the beginning of Act 2. So I guess just keep that in mind. But yeah, again, probably my favorite weapon for Maelle for Act 2, and I probably honestly use this weapon more than any other weapon in the game because Act 2 is so long. So next up is the Stalum. Stalum is available on the world map before you enter Old Lumiere. It's the Steel Chevalier, Stalact, and Bruler battle. There's another upgraded one that you can get inside Frozen Hearts, and that'll upgrade the weapon to 21. Of course, that would be one of the Stalact battles, though. Which, Frozen Hearts can be a very, very difficult dungeon, especially if you're trying to do it in Act 2, but a lot of really, really strong rewards coming out of there. So, anyways, it does have the luck scaling that I like. Don't like the defense scaling, though. But apply burn on self on turn start, and then 10% increased damage for each self burn stack. I'll be honest, I don't really like that. I don't typically try to mess around with something that's going to be dealing my characters damage every turn. So I just honestly I don't really ever use this weapon, mostly because of that level 4 ability. Base attack applying 2 burn, same thing. I don't really like using base attacks with Maelle. I just generally don't think that that's something that's good to do. Mostly just because your goal for Maelle, or at least my goal, is to keep her in virtuous, or kind of on the way to getting back into virtuous. And using base attacks usually doesn't do that. Excuse me. The only time that is somewhat of a okay strategy is if you're using one of the other weapons that will like switch you to a different stance if you use the base attack. So again, I don't really find the level 10 ability that useful. Though that said, maybe this would be okay for more like random encounters. Because there's, I would say a higher chance that you're going to make use of that base attack applying the burn. Obviously, you can blow all of your AP doing free aim shots and then follow up with a base attack at the end. There it says also the level 20 ability, while in defensive stance, receive heal instead of burn damage. So that's another way that you can kind of counteract the level 4, is to actually kind of just hang out in defensive stance. One of the things, obviously, that you can do is once you do get to defensive, you can use Mezzo Forte when it's her turn to stay in defensive stance. I'll be honest, I don't really like that, but again, it could be a decent enough strategy if you're doing random encounters and you doing a bunch of free aim shots, right? So free aim shot down to maybe, let's just say 1 AP, and then at the end of your turn, you use Mezzo Forte to stay in defensive stance. I don't think that that's a good way to play Maelle, but certainly if you struggle or have more difficulty with parries and dodging, that's not a bad way to go about it, right? Because of course you're going to be taking a lot less damage in defensive stance as well. So, all right, so that's the Stalum. Next up is the Battlum. Let's find this guy here. Yeah, here's the Battlum. So Battlum is available in Old Lumiere from the Steel Chevalier battle. I haven't really used this one much either. I think, again, just because I love Jarum so much, I don't, unfortunately, get a whole lot of use out of these other weapons. But it does have luck scaling, which I'm okay with or like. Whereas, unfortunately, though, it does have defense scaling as well, which I don't like. Double gradient generation while in defensive stance. I'll be honest, I don't really use a whole lot of gradient attacks in this game either, so I don't find that all that useful. And then if stanceless, base attack switches to defensive. So that was kind of one of the weapon abilities that I was talking about in referring to the Stalum, right? So there are just a couple of these weapons that allow you to use a base attack to swap to one of the other stances. Now that can be pretty okay, right? Obviously for this weapon specifically. Mostly, though, also because there's a lot of Pictos in the game related to base attack, right? So there's like combo attack that's going to let you swing twice, or the and of course I always forget the name of it, but there's the one Pictos that you'll do the defensive status effect on enemies whenever you use a base attack on them. So there are some interesting things to use with this one due to that. And then the final ability is a 5% of a gradient charge on parry. Again, I don't find that useful just because I don't really do a whole lot with the gradient charges. That's not to say that they're not good, but I just don't really use them that often, and certainly not enough where I'm gonna value something like that on a weapon. But that's my 2 cents on the Battlum. Next up is the Malarum. Alright, so here's the Malarum. This thing is available also in Old Lumiere, but from Renoir himself. This one's kind of interesting, to be honest. It does have luck scaling that I like. There it says, allies recover 20% health on switching to virtuous. That is pretty cool. It's kind of tough for a lot of people, or a lot of the characters in the game, to heal. And so, some kind of like a passive heal from Maelle is kind of neat, right? it's certainly not as usable as something like Lune, who can just, you know, heal on a kind of on a whim, you know, or whenever it's really needed. But a little bit of extra health splashing around due to Maelle is certainly not going to be a bad thing. Apply shell when health is above 80%. That's also pretty cool. And of course, you know, if she's switching to Virtuous Stance a bunch and healing, there's a good chance for that to you know, potentially trigger more than once in battle. So that's pretty cool. And of course, Shell is going to reduce the amount of damage that you take. So pretty cool little effect there. And then switching to Virtuous Stance when health falls below 50%. Also, obviously, pretty cool. Adding to the fact that she's going to heal allies the 20% health because of that. So when she falls below 50%, everybody else is getting a heal. So kind of neat. Not something though that that I would probably end up using, but you know, kind of neat, like I said, nonetheless. All right, so next up is the Chalium. Here we are. So the Chalium is available in the Sinister Cave, and that's obviously going to be after Old Lumiere from the Chromatic Chalier battle. I think that this one is actually very cool and might give Jarum a run for its money. Probably more in Act 3, though, because that's when the damage cap gets removed. And like I said, you know, during Act 2, it's actually just very, very easy for Maelle to be damage capped anyway. But I do like the agility here, scaling that is. And then it says, on defensive stance, gain 1 shield per parry, but lose all shields on turn start. So basically what this means is, of course, whenever you're getting attacked, as long as you can parry, you're going to be getting shields. But then, you know, of course, she's going to lose all of those. Or you're going to kind of restart the process when her turn starts. And then it says 20% increased light damage with skills. I don't remember which of her skills are going to be based off of her weapon, but let's take a look here. I'm not seeing it there. Probably not. Yeah, this is physical damage, physical... I know she just doesn't have... Here we go. So offensive switch says uses weapons element. So with that weapon equipped, of course, the weapons element itself is light. So offensive switch would do the light damage, of course. Yeah, I don't remember what... I'm not really seeing a whole lot here. I could have swore there was one more. Here we go. Fencer's Flurry actually uses the weapons element as well. I don't really like this. Is only 1 hit, though. Obviously, it hits all enemies, but it's only 1, so not big on that. But here we go. Sword Ballet is going to be using the weapons element, too. So actually, that's kind of huge, right? Because for a good portion of Act 3, Sword Ballet is definitely Maelle's best in terms of damage, or highest damage skill. So I will at least say that. Let's get back to Chalium. So yeah, so 20% extra damage there. But again, the only real issue that I have with that is as I said earlier, it's just very, very easy for Maelle to be hitting the damage cap anyway. So I'm probably not going to be really getting a whole lot of use out of that extra 20% light damage. And then 50% increased counter damage per shield. So again, the reason why, and I said this earlier, was that I think that this weapon really comes into its own more in Act 3. There are 3 different Pictos abilities, which is Augmented Counter 1, 2, and 3, that increase your counter damage. And then, of course, another 50% on top of that because of the Chalium would be really, really strong. But, of course, that's also assuming that you're actually able to parry things, because... unfortunately, because of the losing all shields on turn start, you're not going to get any benefit from the last ability there initially, right? You'd have to be parrying a bunch, and of course, the longer the attack chain, the more shields that you can potentially build up, and the more counter damage you can deal. So, very, very cool weapon, though. I do know I did some challenges with Maelle where I did, you know, like some solo battles. Where I really racked up a lot of shields. Probably like the Golgara fight is a pretty good example of that, because she's got some pretty decently long attack chains. So again, able to build up a lot of shields and then really pump out that counter damage. But anyways, that is kind of my opinion there on the Shallium. All right, so next up is the Glysum. Glysum is available in the Falling Leaves, or I should say it's available first in the Falling Leaves dungeon. And of course that's before, well, basically when the Axons become available from the Glaze enemy. This one's kind of interesting, right? So allies recover 20% health on switching to Virtuous Stance. Again, kind of interesting ability because you just get a little bit of extra healing kind of being splashed around. So I think that's kind of neat. Also, I should say agility scaling on this one, which I do like. Unfortunately, though, it does have the defense scaling as well, which I don't typically build, so not big on that. But gain shell when switching out of Virtuous Stance. Again, kind of a neat ability if you're looking to reduce a little bit of damage. Shell is always, kind of going to be nice for that. If you are taking any damage, obviously you're going to be reducing that by, I believe it's 25%. And then cleanse self status effects when switching to Virtuous. That's kind of cool too. There's, some very specific battles in terms of status effects like the Tassir. Unfortunately, though, I guess specifically regarding that battle, I don't really know that it's likely that you're gonna be able to level this thing up because it starts at level 14. So you'd need to have maybe I don't remember when we're kind of able to get a chroma catalyst that will get us to level 20 in terms of these weapons, but maybe those are available then. But anyways, the Tassir, for instance, is a good one that comes to mind because of course it curses you, and being able to cleanse those status effects off of you basically for free, right? Because we're going to be swapping to Virtuous Stance quite a bit. Is actually very neat. So kind of just an interesting weapon. I feel like maybe kind of more useful for battles that you are kind of familiar with or know that there's potential status effects coming up. So not something that I would use, but again, kind of interesting for, I would say, maybe very specific situations. Next up is the Clearum. So the Clearum is available in the Visages area, which of course from the Seething Clair battle. I don't, probably not saying that correct, but interesting weapon for a couple of reasons, right? So agility scaling, which I like. Critical hits with skills give 2 AP once per turn. I really like that. Unfortunately, Maelle, with, I guess most characters, has some, basically her best abilities are very, very high AP costs. So like Sword Ballet, for instance, costs 9 AP, and then Gustav's Homage during Act 2 costing 8 is pretty expensive, right? So, getting extra AP and via just crits is very easy, right? So I always build crit. I should say I always build luck, and also generally in Act 2 my characters have about a 75% crit rate, and of course we're getting the extra 25% via critical burn, assuming that the target is burning. So again, very, very easy to be getting that extra 2 AP via the critical hits. The 20% increased lightning damage with skills, that's not that useful in my opinion for Act 2, but more so during Act 3 once we've got Painted Power, of course, and the damage cap is kind of gone because of that. It's just very easy to hit the damage cap during Act 2 anyway, so again, like I said, you're probably not really going to be getting a whole lot of use out of that extra 20% damage. But that said, of course, the weapons element is lightning, so any of her abilities that are going to be doing, the damage with, or that will use her weapons element, is going to get the benefit from that extra 20% damage. So again, definitely some use out of that, though, even though you're in Act 2 generally when you get this. So. Anyways, last skill there, 50% critical chance while in offensive stance. I don't find that useful pretty much at all. Again, my characters, I always build luck and go for the final 25% to get to 100% crit rate with critical burn. That said, though, every once in a while burn falls off, and so a little bit of extra crit chance certainly isn't going to hurt, though you do have to be in offensive stance to get the benefit. So again, very interesting weapon. I think that this is probably just a bit more useful during Act 3 with the 20% increased lightning damage with skills, but that level 4 ability is very, very good, and I really do like to use, obviously Sword Ballet and Gustav's Homage, so more AP is always a good thing. All right, so that's the Clearum. Next up is going to be the Tisenum. So this is available in Sirene, or Cyrene, from the Tessur battle, so of course that's the optional battle in there. I don't know, I don't really use this one pretty much at all, but it's kind of interesting, only because of all of the characters, probably I use Maelle the most to actually break, so this one could be useful at times. Of course, has the agility scaling there that I like. It says, in defensive stance, double break damage. That's cool, but I typically don't really spend a whole lot of time in defensive stance, so I don't really find that to be all that useful. Gain 9 AP, though, on breaking an enemy. That is pretty huge. And again, unfortunately, with Maelle's best skills being such AP hogs, you kind of need all the AP that you can get, though I don't really break things that often, so, how useful that really is, probably not so much. And then there, breaking an enemy deals a high amount of earth damage. I guess that's great, right? Get a little bit of extra damage when you do break, but again, unfortunately, I would say that it doesn't happen enough for this to be all that great of a weapon. So anyways, that is my stance on the Tisenum. Next up is the Chantenum? Yeah, Chantenum. So this is available in Sirene as well, from the Gestural Merchant Claudiso. It says here, on turn start, if stanceless, switch to offensive. That's pretty cool. Also, by the way, agility and luck scaling, which is pretty much my favorite combination of stats, so I do like that. But again, switching to offensive stance essentially for free is pretty nice. I do definitely like that. Not having to use basically like an offensive switch to get into offensive stance is actually pretty nice. So definitely like that. Fire skills cost 1 less AP. I don't really use fire skills that often with Maelle, and if I do, it's going to be something that's pretty cheap anyway, like Spark. I actually do use Spark quite a bit throughout the course of the game, so I guess 1 less AP on that. Okay, great, right? I'll take it. And then +1 shield on switching to offensive stance. I actually do think that's very, very cool. If you're not as good at parrying or dodging, this could be a pretty good weapon for you. And of course, the nice thing about this one, as opposed to, I think it was the Shalium, is that you don't lose those shields on your turn start. So you could really build up a lot of shields if you're constantly switching between like offensive and defensive stance, or I guess maybe like I don't know what the skills would be able to, or where you'd be able to go from virtuous stance to offensive, because for me that would be optimal, right? Is swapping between offensive and virtuous. So anyways, that's kind of my take on the Chantenum. That actually is a very cool weapon. Unfortunately, though, mine is still here only level 13, but I think it should be possible to hit 20 fairly easily during Act 2. So and if you're interested in that, I would or like I said, if you have issues or troubles with dodging and parrying, it may be a good weapon to invest in early on. Just to, of course, get yourself some shields, and then you don't have to worry about parrying and dodging as much. All right, so yeah, that's the Chantenum. The last weapon that is available during Act 2 for Maelle is the Veramum here. Luck scaling, which I like. I don't like the Vitality scaling, unfortunately, though. And here it says if stanceless base attack switches to offensive. This is another one that would be, kind of useful if you use the base attack a bit. And of course, there's the Pictos or Lumina abilities that are related to doing that base attack, like combo attack. And of course, the one that I always forget, the one that applies defenseless with base attack. So, again, very, it could be, I should say, an interesting ability there, or an interesting weapon ability. There it says counterattacks apply defenseless. I actually do really like that. Of course, as someone who enjoys parrying probably above all else in this game, that is very, very good. And of course, the defenseless debuff makes sure that enemy then is taking 25% more damage. In Act 2, probably less useful than it is certainly in Act 3, but still pretty nice because not all of the characters, and especially if your weapons are kind of low level, it's going to be difficult to hit the damage cap. So I do think that one actually is pretty cool, though. And then 50% crit chance while in offensive stance. Again, I don't really love the weapon abilities that are giving crit chance, just mostly because I already have about 100, well, really, yeah, usually have about 100% crit chance in Act 2 anyway. So I don't get a whole lot of benefit out of that, but if you're not building crit rate, or luck, I should say, maybe that will help you out. So that is kind of my take on all of the weapons. Again, I definitely think that Jarum is the best, or at least it is the best for me. I'm probably going to give the Clearum the number 2 spot, just because mostly because of the critical hits giving the 2 AP. That is huge. And again, very, very nice for, a character that is eating up tons of AP every turn on her skill. So that is going to be it for this one. As always, I hope the guide was helpful, and thanks for watching.